Coming up on Arirang News, President Moon Jae-in calls on the South Korean government to direct its full fiscal capacity to overcoming the current economic crisis, which he likened to wartime. He wants a third extra budget drafted quickly for passage in June. South Korea makes it mandatory for everyone to wear a face mask when using public transportation. It was strongly encouraged already, but some people have not been wearing them because the weather is warming up. And Kim Jong-un holds a meeting with North Korea's top military officials, calling for the regime to strengthen its nuclear deterrence, a sign some say means the North might unveil a new kind of long-range missile. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The South Korean government's now going to require everyone to wear masks on buses and trains. It was already widespread in taxis as well and had been strongly advised. Meanwhile, with 2 days to go until more schools reopen, a kindergartner has been confirmed to be infected. Jongun reports.
Starting Tuesday, everyone in the country must wear face masks on public transport. The government has introduced stronger measures due to the increasing number of passengers and drivers neglecting to wear masks as the weather warms up. Bus or taxi drivers can deny entry to passengers who aren't wearing a mask. For this, previous measures to suspend businesses and charge fines for those who deny entry to passengers have been temporarily lifted.
Additionally, some airlines have been making passengers wear face masks since May 18th, and this measure will be expanded to all national and international airlines starting from Wednesday.
South Korea reported 16 new COVID-19 cases on Monday, dropping below 20 cases for the first time in 4 days. Among the 13 community transmissions, one was a 6-year-old whose private art academy teacher had tested positive the day before. Out of 80 people who were in close contact with the teacher, 79 tested negative. However, concerns are growing over a cluster transmission as the child had been continuously attending the kindergarten. 25 preschoolers in the same class as the 6-year-old are under self-quarantine waiting for their test results. The root of the contagion is yet unknown and no direct link to the Itaewon cluster infections has yet been found. So far, 237 cases have been traced back to the cluster of cases in nightclubs in Seoul's Itaewon neighborhood. 7 cases are 5th-degree transmissions, while 1 case is a 6th-degree transmission. Jongun, Arirang News.
South Korea will soon have a coronavirus test kit that gives a result in an hour or less. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it'll start accepting applications from local medical firms for the emergency use of such kits in the first week of June. The new kits are expected to be helpful in emergencies, such as when testing women about to go into labor. The emergency kits in use right now take about 6 hours for a result. After another 3 weeks out of the public eye, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held a key meeting recently, although on an unspecified date, in which he discussed strengthening the regime's nuclear deterrent. Some experts think that means the regime might soon reveal a new long-range missile. Our Hong Yu reports.
After another several-week absence, Kim Jong-un made a public appearance at a Central Military Commission meeting of the Workers' Party of Korea. Photos of Kim talking in front of his top military aides were released by the North Korean Central News Agency on Sunday. The photos showed Kim using a pointer to explain something displayed on a big TV screen that is blurred out. KCNA reported that Kim was outlining new policies for further increasing Pyongyang's nuclear deterrent. It added that some crucial measures for considerably increasing the firepower of the North's artillery were taken at the meeting.
Kim Jong-un is trying to send a very strong message to President Trump to remind him that it's Kim Jong-un's last year's threat that he would make the ultimate decision regarding North Korea's roadmap to provocation is stands.
One of the threats that Pyongyang had on the table throughout last year was that it would demonstrate a new strategic weapon, which Dr. Go and many other experts speculate could be an ICBM or an SLBM.
So, even though the picture was blurred, probably North Korea is trying to showcase a new long-range missile.
South Korean intelligence is closely monitoring the regime's activities regarding preparations for a test of a new submarine-launched ballistic missile. Kim Jong-un has also appointed Lee Byung-chul, who was in charge of building nuclear weapons, as the vice chairman of the commission. By promoting personnel who are in charge of strategic weapons system, experts say the regime is essentially backing up its threats with credibility. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in has called on the government to direct all of its fiscal capacity to overcoming what he called South Korea's wartime economic situation. Chairing a high-level meeting Monday between the presidential office, the government and ruling party to discuss the country's fiscal strategy, Moon said that the role of finance has become even more crucial because there's no sign of a bottom for the global economy, and South Korea is no exception. Here's the president.
전시 재정을 편성한다는 각오로 정부의 재정 역량을 총동원해야 합니다. 재정은 국가 정책을 실현하는 직접적인 수단입니다. 경제 위기 국면에서는 국민의 고통을 해결하는 데 앞장서 역할을 해야 합니다.
Moon also called for the swift drawing up of a third extra budget with the aim of having it passed by June. He said that it's needed to protect jobs and revive the economy. The country also needs to prepare for the post-virus era and push for a Korean New Deal, he said. The president noted concerns about hurting the country's fiscal soundness, but he said there needs to be enough fiscal spending to overcome the crisis and boost economic growth. After 2 supplementary budgets passed already, the country's debt-to-GDP ratio stands at 41%, which is lower than the OECD average of 110%. Moon added that the government will also be tightening its belt and restructuring its budgets to cut unnecessary spending. The Seoul metropolitan government starting today is accepting applications for relief payments for self-employed people and small business owners affected by COVID-19. They'll get 2 monthly payments of around $560. Excluding those in the nightlife and gambling business, the payments will go to some 410,000 people. Other requirements are that the business must have total revenue of less than $160,000 a year and, as of February, must have been in operation for 6 months. Until June 30th, people can apply online on their assigned day, which is determined by the last digit of their birth year. Or to apply in person, they can go to the designated location in their district on weekdays from June 15th to the 30th. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks in New York started out weaker last Friday because of the new tensions over Hong Kong, but by the end of the session they'd recovered, apparently on hopes for a coronavirus vaccine. Korean stocks, too, quite a bit higher today. What's the story in the markets?
Okay, well, last week, the United States market, as you mentioned, it generally had a roller coaster ride of going up and down, but still generally trended upwards. Today, they will not be trading because it's a Memorial Day holiday in the United States. But at least on the American side, the increased tension between U.S. and China does not seem to be affecting the stock market by very much. If we look at interviews of stock traders, some of them believe that this has a potential to disrupt the market, but some of them believe that when United States takes some of the supply chain back from China, it'll be an opportunity for the United States. The U.S. Dow and S&P has recovered about half of the loss from the drop due to the coronavirus in March, but still they're running much lower than they did on February, though NASDAQ is actually almost back to February levels. They're about 95% of the level that they were in February. Now, China and Hong Kong, unlike the United States, they were hit very hard by the U.S.-China conflict, as well as the Hong Kong Chinese national security law, which will limit activities on Hong Kong. Kospi last week, Kosdaq last week, both, again, a roller coaster ride, but generally trended upwards, and they both also went up a bit today. Kosdaq actually has now hit the highest levels of the year. It's about 3.9% above the highest level that we saw on February before the coronavirus. So Kosdaq is doing amazingly well, but Kospi is still about 12% below the highs we saw in February before the coronavirus.
Right. Well, the Bank of Korea, their Monetary Policy Board, will have a new lineup when it meets this Thursday. The big question is whether they'll decide to take interest rates even closer to zero. What do you think, Professor Yang?
Okay, well, if you look at the market analysts, they're almost split in half. Half believe that there will be a 0.25% cut, and half believe that there will not be one. My personal opinion is that there will not be a rate cut, at least this time around. It's hard to see how much of a good 0.25 cut will do. If we look at the 0.25 cuts that were in the past 3 or 4 years, it really didn't do that much good for the economy. But as I said, half of the analysts believe that 0.25% cut will be effective this time because, well, we're just getting out of the social distancing, going into everyday distancing where everybody is starting to spend a lot more money, and they have gotten emergency relief payment from the government. So hitting them with a 0.25 cut, they believe will be effective. As I mentioned, I have some doubts because, well, Korea will be hitting the second phase of the coronavirus recession, which will hit export sectors rather than the service sectors as we saw in the beginning of the coronavirus. So once we have this sort of a bright shock effect from getting out of social distancing and people realize that the recession in the second half of the year may be very rough, we might see a reduction in consumption even with 0.25% cut. But BOK may also be worried because, well, BOK as well as international organizations have emphasized that fiscal policy, that is government spending, will be much more effective than rate cuts. But right now, the government as well as the National Assembly seems to be somewhat afraid of taking further increases in government expenditure because, well, Korea's government deficit and government debt is rising very quickly. And BOK may lower the rates just to signal the government that they should keep up the spending. The situation is still serious.
Well, now this week, alongside that meeting, there'll also be a new forecast of Korea's economic growth rate for this year. Some still holding out hope for positive growth. Tell us about that or anything else coming up.
Okay, well, I think Korea will be very lucky if we have a positive growth rate this year. But government, well, they tend to err on the optimistic side. They still make realistic projections, but on the optimistic side. So like KDI, I think the Bank of Korea will make a positive growth prediction, but probably below 0.5%. Another important statistical information that's coming up this week for Korea is April Industries Activities Trend Report, as well as the Business Sentiment Index. That'll give an idea of how the businesses are doing and how businesses believe things will go on. And then on the foreign statistics side, we have U.S. consumer confidence figures, which are coming out, and the revised first quarter GDP figures for the United States. The preliminary numbers were 4.8% annualized decline in GDP, minus 4.8%. That's annualized figures, so quarter to quarter it's about minus 1.2%. But they did not have time to incorporate some of the latest March numbers, and the latest March numbers were probably going to be worse than early March or February numbers. So I'm expecting the U.S. GDP projections for first quarter to be revised downwards.
All right, Professor Young, we'll be watching for all of that. We'll have to leave it there for today, though. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Now, amid this outbreak, people are finding ways to get things done while minimizing unnecessary physical contact. One main area that's been affected is shopping, where biometric identification enables you to buy things just by showing your face. Kim Sung-min reports.
To register, just go to your local bank and find a facial recognition kiosk. You stand in front of a huge screen and enter your credit card information. Then, the system maps your facial landmarks and stores them as data. Once registered, you can pay for things at affiliated stores just by showing your face to a screen like this one.
As the payment service uses a non-contact biometric identification system, it'll allow people to do their basic shopping while avoiding direct contact with other people.
Normally, you have to exchange a physical card to pay, but I believe that the growth of non-contact culture because of COVID-19 will accelerate the development of biometric identification in our society.
It's not only the financial sector that's adopting the technology. For building security systems, one major company has gone completely non-contact with some of their products, using facial recognition to replace fingerprints.
Identification is key to non-contact services like online classes and online healthcare services. With Korea moving to get rid of the old system of public certificates for those kinds of services, non-contact biometric identification, which is safer and more convenient, is expected to keep growing amid COVID-19.
The Korea Information Security Industry Association forecasts the domestic market for facial recognition systems to grow to around $121 million this year. And because mask wearing has become the new norm since the virus outbreak, the industry is adapting to that too. Some of the newer biometric systems can identify a person even with their mask on, and some are designed to verify only people wearing masks. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.